health is both above and below the neck, and that it's more than blood pressure, triglycerides, and glucose. We're talking about a much more comprehensive approach that most employers are taking now, and I'm excited to be a part of that and to watch where it goes. I'm going to share this slide for one reason and one reason only, because it continues to baffle me. You probably have seen this multiple times in the past 2 decades. This recently was published in the Wall Street Journal. The cost of employer-provided health coverage is now over $20,000 a year for a family. This is not news to you guys. It's actually $20,576 on average. I was delighted to see Tom Pila's data as what's happened in the past couple of years in the West, because it's actually a negative trend, but across the country, this is what we see. I apologize for this mic here. Let me trade that out. We've seen this year after year after year, and it's beautiful in its design because of its consistency. So I ask, what do you think next year is going to look like? The exact same as it's looked over the past 20 years, right? What are we doing? Now, the dark brown at the bottom there, that's the contribution of the employer for a family plan, and the lighter gold at the top is the employee contribution. On average, the employer is spending 71% of that healthcare dollar, and the employee, obviously, most of us are on the receiving end of that as employees, we're paying that difference. And the other thing that is happening on average is that deductibles are going up, and we're seeing that as deductibles go up, then utilization of healthcare for a lot of average folks, they can't afford it. And so this is clearly, without question, an unsustainable model. At some point, someone's going to say, I give. But the challenge that we have around this is being driven by the business design of healthcare, but also, of course, it's the fact that as a country, we're challenged, right? We're not getting healthier. We spend a lot of money on health, but we're not getting healthier. That's where my energy lies, is how do we create healthier people? Because healthier people not only consume less healthcare, but they get more done and they're happier and they enjoy life more and experience more joy. And that's ultimately the goal of what I believe is well-being. The economic benefit is secondary to the humanistic benefit of well-being. But again, we have to pay attention to this, because it's not so much where we've been or where we are. I believe really what we collectively in this room need to be thinking about is, where are we going and what can we do about it? Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this writer, a gentleman that has written a number of best-selling books, including Blink and the Tipping Point, Outliers. This is Malcolm Gladwell. He writes for The New Yorker. Fascinating guy. I actually heard him speak here in Dallas probably about 10 years ago over at SMU. And in that particular session, he talked about the difference between a mystery and a puzzle. So, I'd never really thought about it before, but in order to solve a mystery, clearly, we have to find clues. And if we get enough clues, connect those together, then we can solve the mystery. A puzzle, though, is totally different. And if you think about a jigsaw puzzle, you open up the box, you dump the pieces out on the table, you turn the pieces right side up, and now the challenge is not to find clues, because those are the clues right there. They're in front of you. The challenge with the puzzle is to put the pieces together. You don't have to look for clues. And I believe this is a perfect analogy for health. We know all of what it takes to create a healthy human being. I couldn't have made that statement 50 years ago. We know, though, every single person in this room and outside of this room knows that exercise is beneficial. They know that managing weight at an appropriate level makes sense, getting enough sleep, getting preventive exams, not smoking. We know the facts about what we should be doing, the what of health. Everybody knows it. It's not a mystery. It's a puzzle. The challenge we have is putting those pieces together. And clearly, we have problems, right? We have epidemics of obesity and diabetes and musculoskeletal conditions and depression and anxiety, and these things are building and building and building. That's our challenge. How do we overcome what has been defined as an obesogenic environment? The great news, the phenomenal news from my perspective, is that about 70 to 80% of your health is genetic. is environmental and based on your behavior. Only 20 to 30% of your health is genetic, mom and dad. Can't change that. But you can change the direction of your health as an individual if we can figure out a way to overcome the environment, right? We've got almost 8 billion people on the face of the earth today, but no one in the world has more impact on an individual's health than they do. So it's not the employer, it's not the government, it's not your spouse, it's certainly not your employer. Our health is really up to us, and it boils down ultimately to our day-to-day choices and how we're able to manage this environment. As leaders, as employers, we've got to make it easier for the people that I lovingly refer to as Joe and Mary Beercan to connect those dots. We have to make health easy for them to overcome this very extremely powerful environment in which we now live. I have a perspective at, being the age that I am, 62 years old, to see how the world has changed in the past 20 or 30 years. It's changed dramatically, the way we eat, the way we work, the way we recreate, the way we communicate, everything's changed. It's an environmental issue. It is not a failure of humankind that we have now 40% obesity rates in the United States. We have 12.3% diabetes that's expected to continue to climb for decades. We've got these issues that are environmental. We have the opportunity to change people's lives, as Gabby pointed out earlier this morning, if we lead it properly to lead people in a healthy direction. And in that case, everybody wins, and we save money in the process. So, David Katz, many of you I'm sure follow from Yale. Dr. Katz, great writer, prolific speaker, loves to say that the truth about diet, weight, and health is stunningly simple and on flagrant display. But that truth has enemies who bury it effectively, not so much in mud as in money. In this, alas, as in so much else, follow the money and the apparent mysteries readily dissipate. So there's reinforcement of what I just said. It's not a mystery, it's a puzzle. And if we really think about what's happening in our world that has certainly changed in the past couple decades, I'll give you an example. Back in 2015, the WHO, the World Health Organization, came out with a call globally to reduce sugar intake amongst adults and children. A new guideline recommends adults and children reduce their daily intake of free sugars to less than 10% of their total energy intake. A further reduction of below 5%, or roughly 25 grams per day, would provide additional health benefits. Universally supported by the medical literature, the scientific literature. That made sense. So a global recommendation that goes out, and shortly thereafter, there was a paper published in a very highly recognized and respected peer-reviewed medical journal, the Annals of Internal Medicine, the scientific basis of guideline recommendations on sugar intake. Guidelines on dietary sugar do not meet criteria for trustworthy recommendations and are based on low-quality evidence. Public health officials and their public audience should be aware of these limitations. So think of not you as a health professional or an expert on benefits and how all this works. Think of you as Joe and Mary Beercan. You hear this on the radio on the way into work and you're like, well, what's that all about? So the average person is not going to dig past this. They're just going to hear that headline and go, okay, sugar's good. But the reality is, when you found out who wrote this paper, who was behind this publication, it was the International Life Sciences Institute, which sounds pretty cool, right? The ILSI, pretty legitimate scientific body. Who funds this ILSI? Well, it turns out to be Coke and McDonald's and Pepsi and Kellogg's and Kraft and Hershey's, General Mills. All companies that I would imagine each and every one of you recognize. And another company, by the way, which was called Tate & Lyle. Who are they? It's a British company that happens to be the largest producer of high fructose corn syrup in the world. So this is the challenge that we have that Dr. Katz alluded to. There's a lot of powerful forces at stake that are trying to change and influence our behavior for their benefit. And I get it. This is America. Companies like to make money. And they've figured out how to do that. If you put sugar in a product, by and large, it's going to taste better, and your consumers are going to crave your product. Good for them. But we have to figure out how to allow people to overcome this, especially those people that aren't in this room, that are much more challenged by life and the day-to-day options and opportunities and choices that we all have. And it's not just the sugar or food companies, it's also this. The new currency is communication technology, right? The new currency is attention. If I'm Zuckerberg and can get you to go to Facebook or Twitter or you name it, Instagram, there's thousands of them, literally. This is their new currency, right? The CEO, Reed Hastings of Netflix, I would imagine most of you have heard of Netflix. Reed Hastings says that the top 3 competitors of Netflix is Facebook, YouTube, and sleep. Pretty powerful. Because if you go to sleep, that's not good for his business model. He wants you to stay up, which is why when you're binge watching some show and it finishes, you get a 3, 2, 1, boom, right into it, because they don't want you to go to bed or the bathroom or into the kitchen. They want to keep you connected. So we are challenged with an environment that is really making it hard to be healthy. That's why leaders need to figure out solutions that can truly help those that are interested to become healthier. But then we see headlines like this that came out last year from the University of North Carolina. 12% of American adults are metabolically healthy. Holy crud, is that scary. 88% of American adults are challenged metabolically. Obviously, things like triglycerides and glucose and A1C and waist circumference and blood pressure, HDL cholesterol, all of those risk factors for metabolic syndrome, we're not hitting on all cylinders. So I certainly am preaching to the choir here. I just want to emphasize how tragic this is and how preventable it is, but it is a major issue for us to overcome our environment. It is not because of discipline, it is not because of genetics, it's because of an environment that has changed radically in my lifetime. Now, where are we going? This paper published in 2017 from the New England Journal of Medicine, looking at childhood obesity rates, right? Obesity in adults in the United States in 1980 was at about 15%. As I mentioned earlier, it's now at 40%. Wow. But now where are we going? Look at the data. Nearly 60% of American children are on track to be obese by the age of 35. So if you think that cost curve that I led with is going to flatten anytime soon, I got news. If you think diabetes is going to go away anytime soon, no way. It can't because of what's happening here. And I know, again, I look around the room and I see some familiar faces that are far better versed on this than I am. Physicians and health professionals really see this clinically on a daily basis. It's really tragic. But again, my goal today is to give you some fuel for the fire to let you know you can influence in a positive way the lives of other people. And I think that's why we're on this earth, right? It's not to trade time for money. It's to really make a difference and leave the campground cleaner than we found it. So I'm going to ask you a simple question, and this is fundamental to what I believe is what wellness or well-being in a corporate environment should be about. How do you feel? That's really, at the end of the day, people want to feel better. They want to have more energy. They want to sleep better. They want to not hurt as much. They want to have more confidence and experience more joy. So I'm a visual guy, so I'm going to give you kind of a choice here visually as to how do you feel. I'm going to leverage my 2 oldest grandsons for this shamelessly. Do you feel like Hudson or do you feel like Henry? Right? Hopefully you feel a lot more like Hudson, but again, it's a continuum. How you feel is not binary. It's not either great or horrible. It's somewhere in between, and we vacillate. But is it possible for us to create an environment where the people in our world are feeling better on a regular basis? They are moving in a positive direction. So, real quick kind of multiple choice question. I want you to think about this. Don't raise your hand. I'm going to show you 5 automobiles. And I want you to think, which of these 5 cars do you most identify with from a health perspective? If we were to kind of rate your personal health, I hope to goodness it's not this car, right? Or do you maybe feel like a Kia? Would that be a good assessment? Or what about maybe a Lexus? That's cool. Or a Ferrari. Raise your hand if you're a Ferrari, right? You don't have to physically, I understand. This is a personal question. But what about this car? Anybody know what this is? Bugatti. Do you have one? No? The Bugatti. If you did, we were going to be friends. ride in a Bugatti, right? A Bugatti. The first time I ever saw a Bugatti was back in 2010 when I saw it in person, and I'm not a car guy, but my goodness gracious, it literally took my breath away. And when I took a look, got online and started learning about the Bugatti, it's got an 8-liter engine, 16 cylinders, it's got 1,500 horsepower. It goes from 0 to 60 in less than 2.5 seconds. It's a rocket ship. Top speed 261 miles an hour. The mileage is not terrific, but that's okay. But the price tag is over $3 million for a Bugatti. That is unbelievable. Now think if you had a Bugatti, how would you treat that automobile? You would put great fuel in the gas tank and you would drive it because it's designed to move. You would treat it like the wonderful engineered marvel that it is. I got news. The only answer you should have for that 5 multiple choice question I just asked is, you are a Bugatti. We all were born with this amazing gift, and if we take care of it properly, it responds really well. If we don't treat it right, it's going to fail us. You are the only mechanic for your Bugatti. You can't outsource your health. You can't pay someone to eat for you, or to get enough sleep for you, or to exercise for you, or to get your preventive exams. You have to do it individually. And you get that. Everybody in this room gets that. But the people that work for us, and the people that we see on a regular basis, they're challenged by everything in life that's going on. Life is not easy. We have to figure out ways to help people be healthy and to develop the healthy habits that we know, not that we think, that we know will help them live a long and wonderful life. And that way, again, as I mentioned, everybody wins. Habits, that is the key to health. A habit is something you do without thinking about it. The more you have to think about something, the less likely it will ever happen. A habit is something you do without thinking about it. How many of you brushed your teeth this morning? Raise your hand if you brushed your teeth. Even if you didn't, sir, you should raise your hand. Yeah. That's why you're sitting by yourself, maybe, evidently. Something to think about. The reality is that's a super healthy habit. None of you went to bed last night and said, hey, we got that World Congress tomorrow. I got to make sure I brush my teeth. You just did it because it's a healthy habit. If you got in the car or the truck today to come to the Anatole, you hopefully put on your seatbelt without thinking about it. That's what health is all about. What we do day in and day out is going to completely influence how long we live and on how well we live. And it's so important for us to recognize that again, as people that sit in a position of influence, we can help people with this. They want help. They need help, and they absolutely are hungry for direction. So, you guys know what it takes. By the way, we have a booth out here. If you could hear, Marianne mentioned that I'm with a company called Naturally Slim, which is based here in Dallas. At our booth right out here, I've got these pamphlets that are completely free. If you'd like a copy of it, it's all built around the Bugatti theme. And so with your 16 cylinders, there's a question there. How many of those 16 health items are you hitting on? How many cylinders are you hitting on? Now, you can drive on 8 or 9 cylinders. You can get from point A to point B, but are you thriving? So this is just a kind of internal checklist where we look at the what, and then the how, and then the why of optimal health. And so the reality is, we all know this, as I mentioned, right? We all know the big 3. Physical activity. No one ever says that it's not good for you. There's an amazing amount of data. I spent 14 years of my career working right up the street here at the Cooper Aerobics Center, which houses the largest database on physical activity in the world. They've published hundreds of scientific papers showing the legitimacy and the importance of physical activity. We were born to move, to run and jump and play and dance and fall and do all the things that we did when we were free-range kids. But we don't have to anymore. It's optional. Because we sit for a living, we stare at a screen, we type on a keyboard. We sit and just don't move in a flexed position. And then we wonder, as we gain weight, why our back and our neck and our shoulders and our knees and our hips hurt. And why then we need centers of excellence to send our employees to go get bariatric surgery or to go get, some sort of joint replaced. It's not because of bad design. We can influence these things. So physical activity at the top of the list. My background's in kinesiology. That would be, if you put a gun to my head, I would say this is the number one thing. We all need to walk the dog even if we don't have one. We've got to get off the couch. We've got to move, and we have to embrace it and look forward to it, because every step that you take is a positive investment in yourself. We have to encourage it and incent it. Fuel, food, nutrition, that's obviously critical as well. You can't put crap in your Bugatti and expect it to perform. It should not be that complicated. But obviously, as we look around the world in which we now live, we have crap everywhere, pardon my French. In the 1950s, there were 1,000 food items in a grocery store. In the 1980s, there were 5,000 food items in a grocery store. Today, 60 to 70,000 food items in a grocery store. And it's not as if we've invented new types of apples or brown rice, right? So if we wonder, why are we in this health epidemic that we're in, this tragic situation as a country, it's because of our lifestyle and the choices that we're making. And then number 3 there is sleep, which I think is the most, most overlooked of the 3 legs of the stool, so to speak. This is the one where most people try to get by. Again, there's a difference between surviving and then thriving. The science is very clear. You should be getting at minimum 7 hours of sleep a night. But the data shows that over 70% of Americans are, to some capacity, sleep deprived at least 2 or 3 nights a week. So are we allowing Netflix and Facebook and Twitter to really compromise our ability to invest in ourselves and get a good night's sleep? I encourage you to think about the last time you had a phenomenal night of sleep, how you felt when you woke up, and how your day went, because you were well rested, because that's what the Bugatti needs. Really important. Now, of these 3, the one that people normally focus on is really interesting. Let's talk about nutrition, which, by the way, if you want to start a sword fight with somebody at a party, bring up nutrition. It's not politics and it's not religion. It's nutrition. I do this, on a regular basis, and holy cow, between paleo and keto and vegans and every other permutation of whatever happens to be the quote-unquote diet of the day or the week or the month, it is amazing how many people think that the way they eat is the way you should be eating. They just firmly believe that. Not supported by the evidence, not supported by the science, as you guys know. There's a lot of ways that we can eat to live a long and healthy life to the fullest. So the reality is, when people say, hey, can I talk to you about nutrition? I say, great, but let me ask you a question. Are we talking about weight, or are we talking about health? There is some overlap, no question. But generally speaking, they're in distinct buckets. And most of the time, when I really ask somebody, what do you want to talk about? They want to talk about their weight. Because again, 40% of Americans are obese, a BMI of 30 or more. Another 35 to 40% are overweight, meaning their BMI is 25 to 30. So we've got almost 8 out of 10 Americans that would benefit, clinically, medically benefit from a lower weight. And it also happens to be something that motivates them, so it's important to think about. So let's talk about weight. The program that I'm a part of, Naturally Slim, we're a weight loss program that we distribute through technology to over 700 companies in our country, 13 different states. We work with cities and counties, hospitals, universities, American Airlines, Google, BNSF, on and on and on. They're all the same. If you look at their aggregate data, if you look at their health claims, it's all going in the same direction, being fueled by obesity and physical inactivity by and large. I'm talking about a bell curve here, by and large, where you look at cost of preventable conditions. So what do we know about weight? Well, believe it or not, it's not what you eat, but it's when and how you eat that will help you lose weight, but much more importantly, keep that weight off. That's the key here. It's not something where you're one and done. It's not what you eat, it's when and how you eat. And you're going to think, well, wait a minute. I've always been told that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I got to eat breakfast. Well, let's look at that data. This came out in the British Medical Journal earlier this year. The effect of breakfast on weight and energy intake, food, systematic review of randomized controlled trials. What did they come away with? While breakfast has been advocated as the most important meal of the day in the media since 1917, there is a paucity of evidence to support breakfast consumption as a strategy for weight loss, including in adults with overweight or obesity. Who do you think has been promoting breakfast consumption since 1917? Kellogg's, Post, McDonald's, Tropicana, Minute Maid. Hey, a day without orange juice is like a day without sunshine. If you want to jack your triglycerides through the roof, have a big glass of orange juice. That's business. The addition of breakfast might not be a good strategy for weight loss, regardless of the established breakfast, there's the magic word again, habit. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't eat breakfast. Don't eat if you're not hungry. If you wake up and you're not hungry, don't feel compelled to eat breakfast, again, if weight is a challenge, okay? Number two, the difference between appetite and hunger. Hunger is the Bugatti's need for fuel. Appetite is the mind's desire for food. Visually, here's appetite, right there. You walk through the break room and you see that big tray of donuts, boom! Without thinking, do I need fuel? Is my Bugatti running low on fuel? No. So we got to learn that difference. And this one seems pretty intuitive, but it's so important. Eat when you're hungry, not when you're not. We have to recognize the stages of hunger, right? So we've all been so hungry that we could literally eat our arm. We're just famished. Conversely, usually after the second or third piece of pie on Thanksgiving, we've been so full we can't eat another bite. We literally have to undo our pants in order to breathe. Hunger is not binary. It's not either or. It's a continuum. And if we break that continuum into quarters, which again is supported by the science and the research, we have stages of hunger. If you're wanting to lose weight and you eat when you're at a level 1 or 2 hunger, you're not going to lose any weight. You can't. You're adding fuel to a Bugatti that doesn't need fuel. So all it can do is store it. Conversely, if you eat at a level 4, if you wait until you're so famished that you can't see straight, all bets are off. You're going to overeat. Because it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for your stomach to tell your brain you've had enough. And by that time you're so hungry, you're going to devour the whole bowl of chips as well as the enchilada platter within seconds of it landing on your table. If you want to lose weight and keep it off, you've got to listen to your body, ignore the clock, listen to your body, and eat at a level 3. And I can tell you we have tens of thousands of participants that we have data on. Published data looking at the outcomes, not just on weight, but on metabolic syndrome as it relates to this. And we now also have very legitimate financial ROI around what happens if you do this. We just partnered with we've been partnering with a large carrier nationally. And just 2 weeks ago, we got a wonderful paper on 4,700 of their participants that have gone through our program looking at claims data. It's a financial win, but more importantly, it's a health win for populations. So eat at a level 3. And lastly, and this is critical, we need to slow down. Keep in mind that your stomach does not have taste buds. We're beautifully designed. Your mouth has thousands, tens of thousands of taste buds on the tongue and around the mouth, and that's designed to allow you to enjoy your food. Whatever it is you're craving, barbecue, pizza, Mexican food, sushi, whatever it is, could be spinach and kale. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're looking forward to, savor it, enjoy it. This is where the party is. Don't bypass the party. Because again, if you do that, you're going to have to add more in order to get the satisfaction center in your brain taken care of. It's just simple physiology. It's not complicated. It's behavior that we need to change, and we're able to help people do that. We do it on a regular basis. And then we add all the other things that go into eating. There's a lot of folks that eat for reasons other than hunger. Emotional eating, something we call vital needs. Talk about saboteurs. We talk about emotional triggers. We talk about social situations. How do we help Joe and Mary Beercan navigate this world in which we live? Then we add in a little physical activity, and then we start factoring other things like sleep, and before you know it, wow, I've lost some weight. I don't hurt as much. I'm sleeping better. I'm more confident. I show up better. I'm happier. Yay me. And thank you, Mr. or Miss Employer, for making this program available. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal impact that we can have on populations. So I'm not here to sell you Naturally Slim. What I'm here to sell you is the understanding that you're in a perfect position to utilize many of the resources that we're hearing about today, put them together, and then come up with a strategy for you to change the direction of the organization that you're a part of, because that's cool. That's a great opportunity. I am fortunate that on a very regular basis I get to meet people that have changed their life as a result of going through our program. For whatever reason, the one that really resonates with me is a guy I met about 3 months ago. I haven't met him in person yet. His name's David Henderson. Served in the Marines for many, many years. He's now a senior project manager for Schneider Electric, based in New Hampshire. And he sent us this picture just the other day, a couple months ago, at he and his wife's 30th wedding anniversary, where he was able for the first time in 30 years to put on his uniform. Look at his face. That's really cool. This is what well-being is about. How can we help individuals, many of whom have given up on being healthy and happy, and give them an opportunity to put their uniform on again? We all have that ability. Bugatti is beautiful. It will do what you ask it to do if you just point it in the right direction. Really cool. So you're thinking, yes, so what else you got? I get it. I totally understand. So Mark Twain used to say that the inability to forget is infinitely more devastating than the inability to remember. In all due respect to Mr. Twain, I would change forget to forgive. It's a very personal issue here. Is there someone in your life, whether it was last week or 25 years ago, that did something that really twerked you, that really guided? The gentleman raised his hand. True confession. The reality is, the question I would have for you is, how's that working for you? We need to be able to forgive. And if we've done something that we know has truly hurt or injured someone else, we need to have that adult conversation and reach out and say, hey, I'm sorry. 15 years ago, I was very blessed to interview Dr. Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits. And at the time, he had 9 children and 28 and a half grandchildren. He had just written a book about families. And I had a 4- and a 6-year-old at the time. And I said, Dr. Covey, what's the one lesson, the one takeaway for a young dad? What would you say that would be? And he says, I will lean on the Asian motto of, if you bow, bow low. As a father, you're going to make mistakes. It's impossible to be a perfect parent. And if you make a mistake, you need to tell your child, I'm sorry. No contingencies. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. It was one of the most powerful lessons I've ever heard. I'm sorry. Reaching out is going to be good for you and that individual. I'm getting the 5-minute sign, so I'm good. Loud and clear, I hear you. Okay. So, don't trip over things behind you. Don't get wrapped around the axle. I believe that the ratio between the windshield and the rearview mirror is a perfect analogy of how we ought to live our life. We're designed to look forward. Let's be thinking about what we can do to improve our environment and our world and our families and our communities. Use the rearview mirror just to give you a little bit of guidance. Really, really important. This is critical. Again, kind of going back to what Gabby was talking about this morning about, social determinants of health. How do we help people navigate the world that we live in? Because life is not easy. Life is hard. Each and every day is a struggle for a lot of folks. We have to develop resilience. An individual's ability to successfully adapt to life tasks in the face of social disadvantage or highly adverse conditions. Can we, employers, create a greater resilience within our population? I think we can. How do we do it? Improve fitness. This is all based on the research. Accept and anticipate change, because clearly change is coming. Status quo is not going to work. Be hopeful. This is very much a choice. Build a community of support, which is exactly what we're doing over these 2 days, and be grateful. Man, this is powerful. A lot of great research now about being grateful. How do you become grateful? You practice gratitude. You intentionally practice being grateful. I took this picture in February when my son and I went to Patagonia on a father-son trip before he got married in March, and I was honored, fortunate enough to be his best man. And I take care of myself so I can do these things. I don't give a rip about my triglycerides, to be honest with you. It's awesome that everything seems to be in range as a result of my behavior and my habits, but this is why. We have to think about our why. Why are we here? And practicing gratitude makes a ton of sense. Rather than focusing on what you don't have, which is that's a no-win situation, practice on what you do, concentrate on the wonderful blessings and gifts that we all have. By definition, in this room, we should be grateful for the life that we have, because if you look around, you recognize there are a lot of folks that don't have what we have. Practice gratitude. David Rast is a 93-year-old Benedictine monk who says it's not joy that makes us grateful, it's gratitude that makes us joyful. I encourage you to start each and every day before you pick up that supercharged computer that we call a phone, before you start checking email and tweets and everything else, just concentrate on 2 or 3 things that you have to be grateful for. Start your day on a positive step. It's a awesome, powerful tool. All right? Today I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life, and I'm not going to waste it. Those are all things that we should be grateful for. So, there's Henry and Hudson again, my 2 oldest of 3 grandsons. My goal, I have a book called Fit Happens, and the dedication of my book is very simple. Dear Henry and Hudson, no offense, dudes, but I don't want to watch you play. However, I want to play with you for many, many years to come. I love you, Pops. That's why we're here. We all have an opportunity to influence others in a positive way. The reason we should take care of ourselves is not for lower premiums, is not for a paid time off. Those things are all fine. The reason we should take care of ourselves is so we can be in a position to positively influence the lives of others. That's a cool thing, whether it be in your family, your churches, your schools, your communities, or your companies. I highly believe that we all can benefit from the collective knowledge here, that we can work together, not independently, we can work together to influence the direction of where our country's going. I'll close with my favorite quote from the late, great Coach Wooden. I'm a UCLA guy. Coach Wooden often said, you can't live a perfect day without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you. I believe that's an awesome mantra for life. So I appreciate your time and attention. Hopefully lunch was good. I'm going to go back and grab some. If you have any questions or thoughts, I am very interested in learning and meeting people that are interested in collaboration. I don't believe we should be an or. We should be an and we should all figure out ways to collectively and synergistically improve the lives of others. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions or thoughts, I'll be at our booth after lunch. Thank you all.